first of all, Harun, I mean, what you have just described is absolutely completely outrageous, because what you have described is an educational establishment effectively being used to promote a political philosophy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and fundamentally, I would have to question the real motivation behind that. But I know it occurs, of course. The reality is that what you've just described, of course, is the goal and objective of the globalist and of the out-and-out capitalist, which is effectively that nobody matters. Human life doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is obviously driving, effectively, corporate and ultimately personal greed. Actually, the guys at the core of the agenda are not interested in the monetary side of it, because they already have more than they could ever spend. They're just interested in the unadulterated power. But from an economic standpoint, I mean, I would absolutely question, the wisdom, if you like, of assuming that a barrierless planet is beneficial. I mean, actually, what's occurring right now in terms of the global financial meltdown is a classic symptom of a globalized economy. And let me liken it to this: establishing a barrierless, firewall-less economy is like building a ship without any watertight doors, or putting a building up without any fire doors. I mean, the thing is that if you build a ship, obviously, shipbuilders know that to ensure the ship's survival in the event of a very unfortunate accident, it needs to have watertight compartments so that you can limit the area that's flooded in the event that the ship is whole. And therefore, there's a good chance that the ship can be kept afloat, and it can be limped into a harbour where it can be repaired. The same with a building. If a large building like a hotel building catches fire, then at least with fire doors, you've got a good chance of being able to limit the damage to a particular area, and therefore salvage the rest of the building, and you know that only a small part of the building is actually going to be destroyed. Now, once you take away the watertight doors, and once you take away the fire doors, the moment there is any kind of unfortunate accident, the ship is gone to the bottom and the building is destroyed. And that's effectively what's happening with the economy here. And that's why right now the Eurozone is in a complete and utter financial disaster. And once again, it's a classic case of something that is being underreported in the media. I mean, people have heard about the riots in Greece. What they haven't heard about is the similar riots that have been taking place in Ireland.
Right, okay.
Also got well, because the Irish economy is in a very similar situation to that of Greece. So is the economy of Portugal. And in fact, there were protests yesterday, violent protests yesterday, directed towards the banks in Lisbon. And in fact, I think there was a protest march of some 300,000 people in Lisbon either yesterday or the day before. I mean, against what is happening to the Portuguese economy, which is a classic case of being part of the Eurozone, being part of the borderless economy, and the Portuguese economists not having any authority to effectively firewall their economy and prevent the outflow of large sums of money.
Well, I'm just totally blown away by the information you shared. Now, you mentioned the media a couple of times. Let's talk about the media. Why does the media seem so biased, Ian? Why is the media so biased and one-sided? Even the BBC.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we go back, let's say 100 years, then the media was owned by a very, very wide range of people. And basically, the trend to what we have today, we can actually trace it back to the events of the First World War. In fact, we can trace it back to about 1916. And I'm just going to share a little piece of alternate history because it is actually very important to the question that you've just posed. And in 1916, Britain was on the brink of losing the First World War. The British economy was shot. I mean, it was totally dependent on support from elsewhere. There was less than 3 weeks of food supplies in the UK, and the British government was seriously considering initiating talks with the Germans, with a view to sort of calling a truce. And this leads actually very much directly into what's occurring, because it was actually the International Zionists who went to the British government and said, you know what, you actually don't have to concede this war with Germany, because with a little bit of help, we can bring in the Americans. And actually what we seek in return is your help in establishing a Jewish homeland. Well, what happened is that effectively the International Zionists went over to the US, and they literally bought up 50 of the regional newspapers. And at the time in the US, there was a lot of media sympathies actually towards Germany rather than to Great Britain. They bought up 50 regional papers and changed the propaganda from being pro-German to being pro-British. And literally, through that campaign, plus, of course, the continued references to the attack on the Lusitania, which had happened the previous year. But through that, they managed to bring about the American support, the public support, to enable Woodrow Wilson to bring America into the war. And of course, literally, that changed the whole balance of power. And after that, obviously the writing was on the wall for Germany, and Britain and America effectively were successful in the First World War. Now, the reality was, what that demonstrated